The thing I love about the Bible, it's so transparent. It tells people's great accomplishments, and it tells also the things that they struggled with and failed at. And we have this tendency when we see somebody who's done something amazing for God to think that they're special, that somehow they're unique, that they don't struggle with the things that I struggle with. They don't have the problems that I have, because many of you come into church and you hear me speak and you're like, wow, that sounds great, but that's for everybody else, because that's like an infomercial. I can't really believe that's for me, that's mine. That God would do that for me. But he says here, seeing we are encompassed about. When you look back on it, who he's talking about? Well, guess what? Abraham, the great father of faith. When you read the Bible, he was a liar. He told off that his wife was his sister, right? Moses, in Judaism, I don't know there's any greater hero than Moses. But do you know when Moses sought out to fulfill the purpose of God, that he justified killing an Egyptian with his bare hands as a means? So in other words, Moses was a murderer. 40 years it sidelined him. And here's the point, whatever you struggled with, whatever excuse you've made in not fulfilling your destiny, here's what the writer of Hebrews is telling you. Any great person that God's ever used has had a past. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, but when you read the scriptures, he had a drinking problem. Yeah, he got rock stinking drunk and didn't even know what happened to him in his own tent. You see, people who God has used mightily, when you read the Bible, it's an encouragement to us that your past doesn't have to define your future, that God is bigger. All the sin, all the shortcomings, all the failures in your life, God's grace is bigger than them all. You know, even in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul talked about his struggles because, as Paul, as a young Pharisee, he considered the Jesus movement abhorrent to God. And he justified being, a terrorist. Yeah, Paul was a terrorist. He tortured people and tried to make them blaspheme. Paul was responsible for the death of people. He struggled. But guess what? You can get over your past and fulfill your God-given destiny. You can't pretend that it's not there. There's a way to overcome it. But you have to realize, because he's pointing out here, no matter what. In fact, think about this. Imagine if you were Peter. Peter, the great apostle that Jesus said, I will build my church, right? Peter, you've confessed who I am. You're going to be a leader in the Jesus movement. But imagine this, every time Peter heard a rooster crow, he was tempted to think of the past. Why? Because the night of what we call the Last Supper, what happened? Jesus was telling the disciples what's about to happen. Peter says, listen, Lord, I won't let this, I'm going to die with you. I won't abandon you. I won't leave you. And Jesus said, Peter, before the night's out, dude, before the rooster crows in the morning, you're going to deny you knew me 3 times. Never, Jesus. And how many times did we promise God? We would never do it again. Well, aren't you glad that John's gospel records this, and that Peter, after denying Jesus 3 times, okay? And if you think he was threatened with his life, it was a servant girl that called him out. A young girl, a teenager that said, hey, you're one of his followers, aren't you? And he got all salty on her, okay? He got all swearing. It's like, you know what? No. I'm not one of those guys. Blankety blank, blank, blank. I'll prove it to you. But Jesus, when he called Peter back into the situation, when you read this in John, why did Jesus ask Peter 3 times, do you love me? And reaffirmed his calling? Because how many times did Peter deny him? 3 times. Jesus let him know that my grace truly is sufficient for you. And no matter what you have struggled with in this place today, I want you to know that your sin is not bigger than God's grace, and that your past does not disqualify you from God's future for your life.